All right, welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. This week it's myself, Colin. I'm joined by Nick. How are you doing, Nick?
Oh, just continuously thinking about Zack Snyder's Justice League and just all of the glories it's brought us. How are you on this fine day, Colin?
I'm confused because I thought Justice was like blue or red or maybe even a dark black, but it turns out Justice is gray.
I can't believe that's a thing that we're gonna have to talk about, but here we are in March of 2021, year of our Lord.
Yeah, so let's just start with the low-hanging fruit. Um, so Justice League is, I guess this is the third cut of the movie. I don't know if you could really call this a separate cut, as the only difference is it's post-produced into black and white, which I mean Snyder's movies are very like grayscale to begin with, so I really don't see how this is going to make a ton of difference. But I also don't think this really serves much of a purpose other than to get people to stream the movie again. Which I don't know. With a movie like this where everything is kind of spectacle and superheroes, I think you're kind of going to see dazzling colors and explosions and whatnot. And I just don't think black and white really augments that at all.
Yeah, I avoided last week's pod so I didn't have to talk about Justice League. Well, I had other things going on, but it was convenient for me. But one of the few things or there's many things that I have issue with in that movie, but one of the biggest ones was just how visually incoherent the movie already is. Like, I don't think, well, there are some really good moments in Zack Snyder's filmography of action. There's some really good stuff in his Dawn of the Dead, and there's other stuff in there that's kind of aged not particularly well because it's a lot of slow-mo. But there's some stuff that looks really cool. But with his Justice League, like, I have no idea what's happening in a lot of the action scenes because there's so many parademons just flying all over the place, and there's like no like visual coherence going on. Like, I don't like one action from one hero doesn't lead into something that's going on like somewhere else in the scene with another hero. It's just like all over the place and things are flying all over the screen, and it's already really hard and all black and like occasional like sprays of dark red or something like that. So like a black and white or gray or whatever they want to call it version of this movie, it just like, I don't like, would any frame like be able to be like looked at and you'll be able to understand anything that's going on? I don't think so.
I mean, I guess I think it'll help the 4:3 aspect ratio feel more genuine, but yeah, I
There's
really
just so much artistry going on in this movie.
other than the like hardcore DC people that are gonna watch it this week, I don't really see people being like, "Oh yeah, this is the definite way to view Zack Snyder's Justice League." I mean, just stick to the 4 hour colored version.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is to serve like the headline like grabbing thing of like, hey, we're giving Zack Snyder his vision back, we're letting him have creative control, and I feel like this is more of just pleasing like the dark fan base that follows a lot of this stuff, which is kind of like an entirely different conversation about fandom, which I don't really want to get into. So yeah, it feels like it's kind of preaching to the choir, just very trying to please them and make them feel cool and make this movie feel like important. I don't know. Like in its themes, it's just very bizarre. Like, people use black and white as a stylistic choice to convey things about the movie itself, and this movie being black and white is just hilarious. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that similar movies. I say similar very loosely, but we've seen other movies of this kind of scale go with the black and white approach. So the big two that really come to mind for me are Mad Max Fury Road, which did the Blood and Chrome edition. I think it was a few years after release, and then Logan, the Blu-ray, I think was standard with a black and white version of the film, which I have seen both of those. I think those movies, what sets them apart is with Mad Max in particular, even the color version is dealing with a lot of similar color structures, because everything is pretty much brown for like half the movie. But it's really the way that George Miller just uses the frame and uses the subjects in the frame and directs the action. and everything. And it helps that a lot of that movie is practical, which tends to film in black and white a little bit better than just turning something a different color in post. And then with Logan, it very much fit the style of that kind of classic noir type anti-hero and that classic Western vibe that Mangold and just really that whole movie goes for. So it makes sense from a genre standpoint, whereas Justice League 2021 is just a superhero movie, right? There's nothing that really grounds it or gives it any connection to black and white, other than the fact that Batman occasionally wears black and white. But yeah, I just don't see the point.
Yeah, and the other thing about those movies are that they take place with a lot of sunlight. Like you can see what's happening in those movies, and that also just tracks well with black and white. Like I said it before, but so much of this movie is just in pitch black, and like you really don't have to change much at all, honestly, for it to be black and white. But the colors that are there kind of help you like discern what's happening even a little bit. So, I mean, I guess for people out there who love this stuff, have fun. But I will not be partaking. I sat through my 4 hours. I had a very weird, occasionally fun, but ultimately strange time. And now I'm moving forward with my life. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's all that needs to be said on Justice is great. But then we will touch on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So we are more or less through the first act. So this is a 6-episode series. We're through episode 2 at this point, kind of have a vibe for what's going down. I think I really liked this episode. I don't get me wrong, I liked the first episode, but I think this one was much, much stronger. I think we got a lot more of the like buddy comedy, Lethal Weapon, Hobbs and Shaw vibes between Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm still not as crazy about this as I was with WandaVision. And there's a particular issue that I'll touch on after you've talked a little bit about it as well. But I kind of like where it is. Like it's fun. It's just kind of that sweet, sweet Marvel formula. Just giving it back to us.
Yeah, I'm happy we're talking about this after episode 2 because I feel like after episode 1 I would have just come on here and said, this TV show is very, very fine. It's just right down the middle, Marvel stuff, Marvel doing Marvel, spies, things like that. Fun, but like nothing crazy. But I did really like the second episode as well. And I think it touches on a few interesting ideas that I hope that the rest of these episodes continue with. Because I guess we'll go into spoilers a little bit, but there's the one scene where Bucky takes Falcon to Baltimore, and he introduces him to this black super soldier that I think what they squared off, Bucky and him squared off in Vietnam, right?
And it's like Korea.
They were like these. Both of them were like these mythical beings that like just destroyed everyone in their paths, and then they finally fought together. And there's kind of a cool backstory, but he's just been chilling in Baltimore because basically the government just failed to recognize him and put him in jail for a really, really long time. And I think with the idea of succession that this movie I keep saying it and I keep calling it a movie, but but this show is kind of hinting at where it's who's going to pick up the mantle of Captain America. I think it does speak to some really interesting ideas about Anthony Mackie as a black superhero and his place with the government itself. I think there's some really interesting things that hopefully this continues to play with. And race is definitely not even an undercurrent. It's very much on the surface of this story because right after that scene, you have the run-in with the cops who are very willing to arrest Falcon until they realize that he is Falcon and they back off immediately. So I'm hoping that because Marvel is... I've talked about this a lot, where Marvel is very much about itself, but I hope that it continues these themes because I think that could lead to some really interesting stuff, especially when you have Wyatt Russell, who I really like as fake Captain America, but he is like the former military dude, like super kind of like the beacon of what we think of as like, oh, he's truly American. He's just like this white dude who isn't the military. He has morals, and we just kind of elevated him for no reason, even though Falcon's right over here and is like fought in intergalactic wars. So I think there's some really interesting stuff that I hope that this continues with. But yeah, other than that, it's really fun. Bucky and Falcon are really fun together. I really like. I mean, one of my favorite parts of Civil War is just when they're chilling in the car, and Bucky yells at him to move his seat up, and he's just like, "No." This is really funny, and this feels like an extension of that. So I think I like it so far. I'm waiting to see how they land the ship here, but I'm feeling pretty decent so far.
Yeah. I think it's a little untimely to make ship jokes. Just given everything going on in the Suez Canal right now. But I did so first off, I want to say that this episode was really funny, which is one thing that I really enjoyed. Like there's a really good exchange. I think it's right when they get to Baltimore and this kid's like, "Oh, you're Black Falcon." And then Falcon's like,
Yeah,
"No, it's just
that's
the
a good
Falcon."
one.
And he's like, "No, my dad said." He's like, "Okay, so would you be Black Kid?" And then so there was stuff like that, and there was like a good Wakanda joke about Bucky. Um,
Yeah,
but
White Wolf.
yeah. But as far as touching on race goes, to me it feels like they're really pulling their punches. And it may be that we have 4 episodes to go and they're gonna land those a little bit later on. But in particular that scene when they're in Baltimore and they are getting stopped by the police and they're getting ready to arrest Falcon, I feel like it just kind of magically goes away. They're like the guy goes to his car, they figure out he's Falcon, they're like, "Oh, actually Bucky's coming with us and everything's cool." And then we just kind of cut that tension without any real resolution and then move it on to another like group therapy scene. And so there's that element to it, and I feel like they kind of did this a little bit in the first episode as well when they're kind of touching on Falcon getting the loan and trying to just like explore the way that banks typically don't lend many favors to minorities. But I feel like they're offering us the setup, but we have yet to see any real like payoff or any real discussion of what's going on. It's like it's more of just like a base acknowledgement, like, "Hey, doesn't it suck that this happens?" Without ever offering any commentary on it. So I'm hoping that it'll go that direction. Based on what they've set up, I think it probably will. But for the time being, it just feels like they're going a little soft on the issue.
Yeah, I definitely agree because it's right. You're right because they bring it up and they move on to the next scene. But yeah, I do think that because they have brought it up in both episodes, I think that it's definitely on the minds of the screenwriters and everyone else involved. So my guess is they're gonna take it someplace. And I think it's also interesting because there's been a lot of like scholarship about the Marvel movies and how a lot of like their ethos is very right wing and like pro military, and there's been a lot of writing about that I find really fascinating. And from the first episode, you think like, oh yeah, these dudes are just working for the military. They're just gonna go out and do all these missions and help the government. But I think the second episode does bring a lot more of that into question, where it's like, oh, do they really care about us and specifically Falcon? And are we just like their pawns and doing all of their dirty business, where we can operate outside the lines where they can't? So I think there is definitely that undercurrent there that I think is really interesting. But yeah, I am like you though, because like like we have like very radical terrorists, which I'm sure that they won't explore the depths of in this season. What are they called? The flag smashers?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called? So there is a lot of stuff here that I am intrigued with, and I hope that it doesn't turn into Marvel bullshit by the end, which it probably will. There's probably going to be some big fight at the end, right? But for these 2 episodes, I think they've set up a lot of nice things, and it leads us to the third episode, which is they're going to go talk to Zemo, which I think is certainly going to take it's going to put a lot of stuff into like move a lot of stuff forward. So I think we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, and I think Zemo is one of the stronger MCU villains. And we really haven't seen a whole lot of him. And we really haven't seen like the maniacal supervillain side of him. Like he's just Zemo when he's in Civil War. So it'll be nice to kind of explore him a little bit further. And then you have just kind of all of the side characters from Civil War coming into place. So like Agent Carter is there, probably gonna have some commentary about how her boyfriend left her for her aunt. So we've got
Very strange, very strange.
we've got that coming in, which will be nice. So I definitely like where it's at. And I think even if it does kind of fall apart into big battle at the end, I feel like it would feel more organic in this scenario as opposed to WandaVision, which is very much like grounded. I mean, it's a sitcom for most of the time, but it's like the last two episodes just kind of throw the premise out the window and big CGI showdown. But since combat and just kind of that sort of aggression is one of the main aspects of this show, just it being two guys that sort of work for the military, I feel like it flows into that typical Marvel beat 'em up a little bit smoother.
Yeah, this is a super masculine show. Just a bunch of dudes being dudes, just uncomfortable with touching legs in their therapy sessions. You know, just there's a lot of alpha males in here, but I think it is fun. And I really like Wyatt Russell too. He's always been. I mean, obviously he's Kurt Russell's kid, so there's a lineage there, but he's kind of flown under the radar, I think, a little bit as an actor, and I like him a lot. I think he's really good when he pops up, especially in 22 Jump Street, which is like one of my favorite comedies ever. I think the movie's fucking hilarious, but I think he's really good in here. I'm just interested to see with this, and I think you're right with Zemo as well, because he's just kind of a guy. Like, he's just there. He's more of an ideology than like a supervillain, you know. And I think that's a little more interesting to me. I think like a lot of people didn't like Zemo in Civil War, but I thought it was kind of cool for that reason. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. I enjoy, like, I really enjoy Winter Soldier, and I really enjoy when Marvel goes a little more spy in their movies. I think there's something a little more tactile to it, and sometimes I struggle to like understand like when like wizards are like flying all over the place, or I guess sorcerers, as they made the distinction in this episode. So I think it's really cool. I like what I'm seeing somewhat. Nothing crazy, but I've been entertained.
Yeah, I don't have many complaints. But let's go ahead and wrap up superheroes with the Suicide Squad trailer. The Suicide Squad. Not the Suicide Squad trailer. um, so this is the sequel reboot of 2016 Suicide Squad, which I would like to point out also had a really strong trailer before being just an absolute train wreck.
This is very true.
But the difference is, so DC seems to have been learning their lessons. James Gunn has been very open about like how the process has been for him on Twitter, and supposedly he hasn't really had any, any real pushback from the studio. And this movie's also marketed as the fact that a lot of these characters are actually going to die, which when you look at just how many characters are in this movie, there's no way that that's not going to happen, because there's like 20 people listed at the end of the credits, and they're all like pretty recognizable people. So I'm excited to see a lot of carnage. And yeah, the trailer just like sold me on that kind of weird off-kilter James Gunn vibe. It looks like Rick Flag, who was kind of the main character in the last movie, has gotten quite the do-over in this movie, as much less self-serious military bro, and is more like just hanging out with shark people, which I like.
Yeah, he's just regular goofy bro now.
But I like what I saw. Like, this was a strong trailer. We got a lot of looks at just what seems to be kind of the core. So that's Harley Quinn and Idris Elba's Bloodsport, which is just kind of filling in for Deadshot, but hopefully will be interesting. And then Rick Flag and King Shark, who's taken over the memes. I know I'm probably going to be a minority on this, but I like Jai Courtney. I'm excited to see Captain Boomerang come back.
I like Jai Courtney too. I'm glad we align on this.
He's a lot of fun. I don't like him in Terminator Genesis, but that's mainly because I don't like Terminator Genesis. But I like when he shows up in things, so I'm excited to see him not get cut out of Suicide Squad. And then John Cena just looks like he's hamming it up as Toilet Bowl Captain America. Like, there was just a lot to like about this trailer.
Yeah, Jai Courtney is really fun in this movie. It's called Buffaloed, I think. It came out 2 years ago. It was Zoe Deutsch is in it. It's really fun. I encourage people to check that one out. But yeah, I'm in on this. I was a little nervous at first because, I mean, it's kind of rinse and repeat plot where it's like we're going to just inject things in your head again. And Viola Davis looks like she does not give two shits. Like she looks like she would rather be anywhere else except this movie. But I don't know. Hope the paycheck was nice for her, I guess. So, but everything else looks really cool. John Cena is quietly like an amazing comedic actor. I feel like he plays really well with like he's like so massive. And other than The Rock, where The Rock is still like, I'm awesome, John Cena's like, no, I'll butt chug some beer. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay, like, being goofy and making fun of myself and joking at my own masculinity, which I just think he's really fun. And Idris Elba's great in everything he's in. I'm really happy to see Margot Robbie back as Harley Quinn. And then, yeah, we got Stallone as the fucking King Shark. That's amazing. There's going to be so many. I'm looking forward to all the memes that come out of this movie just because of him. They're already going nuts, but especially after the movie comes out in August, it'll be amazing.
Yeah, and it's cool because he was originally going to be in the first Suicide Squad movie, but David Ayer didn't want to do a fully CGI character, which is why we got the really racist Killer Croc.
Yeah, that was great.
It's nice to see him get some weird justice with this. And then we still don't know who Taika Waititi is playing. I would imagine he's probably going to be playing Starro, who appears to maybe be the main villain, which would be kind of cool. But he's still out there. I'm really excited to see Polka Dot Man, because Polka Dot Man, and B, because I really like that actor. David Dastmalchian,
he's fun in everything he's in.
Yeah, he was in the Ant-Man movies. He was in The Dark Knight. He was in the Dune movie coming out pretty soon. Like, he's just fun, and it looks like he's just playing this really depressed polka dot boy in the Suicide Squad. So I'm excited to see that.
Who plays do we know who voices the weird cat?
That is Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love when he shows up. He's fun. And it's like normally like annoying where it's like, the guy cast his brother in this, but in that case, I really love Sean Gunn. He's fun. But yeah, then this movie just looks like it embraces its weirdness very much. It feels like this is kind of what Suicide Squad should have always been, where it's hard R, goofy, gnarly, violent at times. Like you have King Shark just slicing that dude in half, and it's very bloody, and there's guts flying all over the place, and his spine's hanging out. It looks like it's kind of like it's like a mix of superhero stuff and also like a gnarly 70s and 80s action movie. It's like a Wild Bunch. Like you or I guess that's like in the 60s, but you get the idea. Where it's just kind of like get this weird gang of people together, go out and do this mission, and then kind of go on with our lives. It looks a lot of fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the first Suicide Squad, you can see where they very much saw Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, and then we're like, no, we're making our Suicide Squad like this. So it's cool that the guy that they were trying to imitate is now at the helm. And it seems the studios left him alone a lot more than they did with David Ayer. So it'll be nice to see, hopefully, just like the weird James Gunn chaos that Suicide Squad was always meant to be.
Yeah, and I think we always forget, since he's been in like the Marvel machine for so long, but before that, James Gunn was just out here just being really weird and making like very gnarly movies. Like have you ever seen Super?
I've seen Slither, but not Super.
Super it's an amazing marketing job where it marketed itself as like this super quirky like street level crime movie where what's Dwight from The Office's name? What's the actor's name?
Rainn Wilson.
Yeah, Rainn Wilson. I don't know why I couldn't think of it, but he stars as this schlubby guy who runs around yelling "shut up" crime and beating up criminals. And it looks like this really goofy movie, and then the movie itself is like kind of like profane and disgusting and like really awful and like super black comedy. So like he was just out here doing all this weird shit, and then Marvel was like, here's $300 million, go make your movie. So it's kind of fun to see. It's like this movie certainly looks like it's a blend of those two things, where it's letting him just go nuts, but also with a pretty decent budget. So it's fun.
Yeah, if you've never seen it, I would recommend James Gunn's PG Porn. which is a bunch of it's a web series he did with his brothers, and like Michael Rosenbaum, who was Lex Luthor on Smallville, is in like a ton of them. I think Craig Robinson from The Office is in a couple of them, but it's just like it's literally like a porno but without any porn in it, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, he was just out here just doing weird shit. It's amazing. What a guy.
So that is, I say that's it for superheroes, but the next movie we're going to talk about is more or less a superhero movie, and that is Nobody, which came out this past week. It stars Bob Odenkirk, and it is basically John Wick, but his wife is alive and he has a family, and it's definitely a lot more lighthearted and more like Kingsman in style, but it's really good. So the plot, I think they slightly improve on like some of the logistics of the first John Wick movie, where basically nobody goes out, he beats up a criminal's relative, the criminal gets mad and is like, I'm gonna turn the entire Russian mafia on you. And that's the plot of this movie. They do add like a little bit more backstory to the main villain, whose Russian name I can't pronounce. And then they also
Do you want to try for our audience here?
Kuznetsov.
That's great.
I can't pronounce the actor's name either. So
you did great. I'm proud of you.
So they do improve on things like that, and I think they world build a little bit better than the original John Wick does, in a smaller space. Christopher Lloyd plays Bob Odenkirk's dad, and he's just incredibly fun in like all three of his scenes. But this movie was really good. Like it's only like an hour and a half. It's a really good, just like straight action movie. You just kind of get right into the action. You don't ever really let off. Bob Odenkirk is punching things. I do like that his character in the movie is a lot more grounded. Like he gets hurt, which you don't really see John Wick do just a ton of in the first movie. After he gets knocked out, he's still fairly invincible most of the time. But you see everybody kind of get the floor wiped with themselves. It's a lot of fun. There are guns, there are explosions, there's a car. Just 10 out of 10.
There's a car? That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this movie at some point. I am interested to see like how much of like the film zeitgeist this captures, because it's in theaters. I think it's just in theaters, right? It's not on VOD yet.
Yep.
So I'm curious how many people actually choose to go out and see this movie. Because I think I'm just going to wait until VOD, because it's playing around me, but haven't gotten that beautiful vaccine yet, so I'm still chilling here waiting for my day. But I am interested to see, because I feel like this was supposed to be like, I assume they set up for sequels in this as well. So I assume this was supposed to be like a big, let's start a fun action franchise movie. And I wonder if it gets the audience to do that. I mean, maybe, I think it's Universal that released this. Maybe they see some numbers that are like, this wasn't quite what we were hoping, but this does make us think that this might do better in like a regular theatrical release in a few years when we make the second one. So we'll go ahead anyway. But I would like to see this, and it comes from Derek Kolstad, who actually wrote all the John Wick movies. So those are all your similarities right there. And yeah, Bob Odenkirk, he's the best. Like, how could you not want to watch a movie with him in it?
Yeah, and it does feel very much like someone was like, let's remake John Wick. But they change enough and they bring enough just originality to it. This movie does stand on its own really well. It's got a fairly forgettable villain, but Bob Odenkirk's character Hutch is a lot of fun. Again, I love Christopher Lloyd in this movie. He's just out there like cashing his paychecks at 80, however many years old he is. And yeah, it delivers on all the action. It's only an hour and a half, which just earns a star for any movie on its own. Just chef's kiss is Nobody.
Yeah, and it's yet another old dude does action movie, which I feel like Taken was the first one. Well, not the first one, but it was that started this wave of old dudes to like murder people action. Like you have two Equalizers in there and a bunch of others. So it's interesting. This just keeps finding a way. I wonder how long Bob Odenkirk would be able to keep all this up, because apparently he did a ton of training beforehand for this movie to make all of his action look believable. But how old is he? He's getting up there. Like, I don't know. Could he do 3 movies? Like, I feel like who knows? But good for him. They got the movie made, and it sounds like it's fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing it at some point.
Yeah, and this doesn't appear like it's something that'll put an actor through the ringer quite like John Wick would, because it's not nearly as seamless. The action is still really good, but it's more like post-produced and edited into being really good rather than like we have this brilliant choreography we're not going to cut at all. And so it feels like it's less taxing on him and probably gives more of an opportunity for stunt doubles to come in, which is something that Keanu doesn't have as much of a luxury of. So I feel like that's part of it too, because I mean Bob Odenkirk is almost 60, so yeah, it does kind of raise the question: can he really do this? But then again, Harrison Ford's going to be like 84 by the time Indiana Jones 5 comes out. So,
do we think that's actually going to come out? I feel like because Spielberg gets attached to so many movies, then he's just like, nah, just kidding. This movie's been rumored for 5 years, but I'm not going to make it anymore.
well, I mean, so James Mangold is taking the helm of it, and supposedly it's starting to shoot this summer. I believe it's set to come out next summer. I really don't see there being an Indiana Jones 6 because again, Harrison Ford is going to be 80 something years old. And I feel like the time to pass the baton would have been, 13 years ago when Shia LaBeouf was ready. But I definitely don't see Shia LaBeouf getting handed the baton now. And I don't really know where else you could go. But I do like that Mangold's directing it. I think it's definitely going to feel different than, the first 4. Definitely different than the first 3, but I'm excited for Indy.
Yeah, why not? Who cares?
But yeah, that is Nobody and Indiana Jones 5. And then we'll move on to the MovieBabble Club with an exclamation mark. So this week was my week to pick. So we've made our first full lap. I decided to go with something I didn't really know existed until I just was like, you know what? I think Audrey Hepburn would be a cool person to watch this week. So I went with the 1957 film Funny Face, which stars Audrey Hepburn and Fred Astaire. And this is a rom-com about a magazine photographer. I don't remember what the professional title for that is.
It's like Quality Magazine or something like that. Is that what it is?
Something like that. Who ends up falling in love with one of his new subjects. And Nick was talking about this before we got on, but it's basically one of those like girl takes off glasses, oh my goodness, she's hot scenarios. So before we really jump into it, what did you think just kind of generally about Funny Face?
Yeah, it's so true because there's like 2 songs in the beginning where like the song that uses Funny Face where it's like, you're not that pretty, but I like you. You got a personality. That's basically what they boil down to. So it's like, dude, this is Audrey Hepburn. She's like one of the most beautiful actresses ever, but whatever. I like this movie. It's fun. It's very fluffy, which I really enjoy from time to time, especially with like some of these more old, like classic Hollywood musicals. They're just very fun, and you get to sit back and watch a lot of beautiful colors. It's the exact opposite of Justice is Gray. And then you get to watch Fred Astaire just be a great dancer, and also Audrey Hepburn, which I didn't realize she was a really good dancer, but it was really cool to see both of them play off each other. And I think it's the only time they ever acted together, which is also kind of cool. But yeah, it's kind of fun. There are like some weird things about like Fred Astaire's like 30 years older than Audrey Hepburn, right?
Yeah.
But which is kind of tough, but it's the production design is really cool. I enjoyed a lot of the dancing. It's nice fluffy 100 minutes.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on that point because it is really distractingly obvious how much older he is than Audrey Hepburn in this movie.
Oh yeah, because she's like what, like not even 30?
She was 28 when this was filmed, and he was 59, I think. So that's a 30-year difference. And I think part of it too is Fred Astaire. This is towards the end of his career. And this is in full Technicolor, so you really see all of the wrinkles pop out. But this is also at the beginning of Audrey Hepburn's career, so there's just that time difference between how long they've been in the industry and just kind of that preconception of them going into the movie. But yeah, it's very very noticeable how much older than her he is. And
Yeah, I do. Yeah, go ahead.
they don't ever really acknowledge it in the movie either. They kind of treat them like they're basically the same age.
Yeah. I do appreciate though, because yeah, you're right. Like this is kind of getting into the later stage of Fred Astaire's career. He's definitely in the back nine at this point. So he's kind of like his dance moves have slowed down a little bit. He's still an amazing dancer, but he's just not flying all over the place like he used to. It seems like a lot of this, because you follow like the arc of his character, which is just like, wow, I learned about empathy by the end of the movie, because they talk about empathetic. I can't even say it. It's like the empathy, but an ism. It's tough, but they like basically it's kind of there is a lot of that passing the baton from him to her, and like that works also in life because obviously Hepburn would go on to have an iconic career. But in the movie itself, where it's just like, yeah, you know what, you're pretty cool. I'm gonna bow down to you a little bit and let you do your thing. And even in the dancing sequences, he's kind of just letting her take center stage, which is kind of cool in that sense. So it's not. I feel like they play like as well as a 30 years old age gap could go. I feel like this isn't the toughest that we've ever seen in that sense, but yeah, it's still not that great.
Yeah. I do want to point out that this movie is a quasi adaptation of a musical by George and Ira Gershwin from 1927 that Fred Astaire was also in, playing a different character. And actually, it's really only the songs that are kind of lifted from that play in this movie, so it's a completely different plot. But it is cool to have just kind of that touch of history, and cool to see somebody remaking their own career at that point. Um, Fred Astaire making a movie that he made or that he started on stage 30 years earlier.
It's Fred Astaire's Ready Player One.
True. But some things that I really liked. So, well, first off, I honestly can't remember a single song from this movie. I don't think that the music really sold me on it. None of these songs really stuck with me at all. I mean, they're kind of fun when you're in the moment, and I think the dancing is really good. We'll touch more on just kind of the sets and the production design in a minute, but musically, this musical didn't really land with me a whole lot.
Yeah, I like the Pink song at the beginning. That song's fun, and it has like they change everything into pink, which just makes it more recognizable and memorable. But yeah, I think you're right. I think in terms of the musical stuff in this movie, the best part of it is the dancing. I think my favorite scene is when Audrey Hepburn starts dancing in the cafe, where she's talking to Fred Astaire and is like, "I just need to express myself," and then she goes on like this very strange and also really cool dance sequence with two other nameless Frenchmen, and they just call it Dance Around. And my favorite part of that scene is the ending, where she does her big, like, she collapses because she's like, oh, like at the end of, like, you see these at the end of all these musicals where they do this crazy dance number and then they like collapse because they're so tired at the end. And then she falls into the lap of like these two people having a conversation, and they never break their conversation. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, where like they don't even like acknowledge that this woman just fell into their laps. Like, if you watch the scene, she falls into their laps, they're having their conversation, and the actors never break. Like, they never even acknowledge she's there. It's like one of the funniest things. It's honestly some of the best acting in this movie. It's those two random people. But I really love that scene. It was really cool, and it shows just how talented and multifaceted Audrey Hepburn is. So that was my favorite part.
Yeah, and I did really like that. I can't remember the title, but the Pink song at the very beginning of the movie. And Think Pink is the name of it. And I just love the production design. Like, it feels very like 60s magazine-ish, even though, the 60s were a few years off. But it very much fits that vibe of like the glamour magazine and the models and just kind of that art scene, that art deco kind of feel. for the next generation at that point. And I really liked just the way they're moving the set around, and like people are popping out of pink doors, and it's just like this nice big, almost like half rotunda with all these doors in the back. And I just really liked the production design of this movie as a whole. Like there are a lot of really creative sets, and there's one shot I want to talk about in a minute in the cinematography of this movie. But I really like what they did with the spaces they had. And there's later on in the movie, there's a scene where Fred Astaire's character is like climbing on Audrey Hepburn's balcony, and he jumps down to the street below and does a little jig. And I think that was really creative how they move him down into the dance number as well.
And they also an amazing sequence where he like pretends to be like a bullfighter, and he throws his umbrella in a trash can, and the throw is literally like 50 feet. It's amazing. Like it's like I locked onto a few of like these small little things in this movie where it's like, first of all, like that was all like in one shot, so he would have had to do the whole dance number over again if he missed the umbrella shot, right? So I don't remember a cut in there. It was amazing. But then later on, there's that raft that they used to cross the river multiple times, and I was just really impressed how they got it to like work correctly and not just flow down the river. Maybe there was some movie making chicanery in there, but it was really impressive to me. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like that part of it, and then I really like just what they did with lighting. So I think the photo room probably sticks out as the most obvious because you're dealing with a lot of like artificial red light, but just the way they really immerse you in just kind of that whimsical world through the lighting, and they also kind of further that, you know, Art Deco, like new wave 60s art style through a lot of the lighting on top of everything.
Yeah, and they have the really impressive sequence in the middle where they're doing all the photo shoots by all the famous French like monuments and whatnot, and they take the picture, then it goes to like they do like an effect where it looks like it's going through the dark room and all that stuff, and then like it goes, and then you see like the final picture itself, and it's really, really cool, and the colors are popping really interestingly. Yeah, it's the direction in this movie and like the art design, production design, all of that is just stupendous. That's why you watch this movie, because after like I feel like the like the weird relationship stuff is mostly at the beginning. I mean, it's all the way through, but like all like he kisses her in the bookstore, and you're like, that's kind of weird. Like, and then it kind of mellows out, and it turns into more of just like a travel log of Paris. And yeah, Paris is looks like a really nice city. So it's just nice to just have them just travel around, and just there's the whole dance number, the song and dance number where they're just like, oh yeah, I love Paris. I'm an American, and I love being a tourist in Paris and seeing all the wonderful things. So, yeah, it was nice. I like that.
Yeah, and there's one shot in the light room that I want to talk about in particular, and I believe this is when they're singing "Funny Face," where so Audrey Hepburn is hiding from all of the, I don't know what they are, like marketing women, or I don't know. There's like a horde of women that are trying to like force her into being their new model.
Yeah, are they like all the secretaries? Like, yeah, it's
weird. And so she ends up running into the light room. She has this little conversation with Fred Astaire. It breaks into the song "Funny Face," which felt like a very, I guess, for some kind of Suicide Squad moment. But they do that, and there's a really, really good shot at the very end of it where he's projecting one of his images onto the blank canvas on the wall, and so he flicks that light on, and I don't believe they cut in between the rotation, but it just like perfectly illuminates her face against the backdrop in this light room, and it was a gorgeous shot. I love it.
What a picture! Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Picture.
There's a lot of really cool stuff that they do in this movie that is very impressive. I think you watch this movie for the direction, how swiftly it moves through all the dance numbers. Because even in the dance numbers themselves, like there are a few moments where it's just kind of like, let's lock off the camera and have Fred Astaire dance in the middle of this really like big room. But there are some other moments, like especially in the cafe scene, where it's following Audrey Hepburn around, and it's getting a little more. There's a lot more movement in the camera itself, which I thought was really impressive, and it moves really nicely. So it's just cool. There's a lot of fun little stuff in this. I found myself really impressed with the filmmaking of this movie, rather than like I could care less about the romance.
Yeah.
But like all the filmmaking itself is really cool.
It was definitely more of a craft movie than it was like, yeah, let me get really engaged in this story.
Yeah, I can't say I bought that romance one bit, but hey, what can you do?
So yeah, that is Funny Face, and my second pick for the MovieBabble Club. But before we wrap up, I do wanna ask the question that's on everybody's minds. So the matchup of the year that is going to save theaters comes out this week. That is Godzilla versus Kong. Who you got?
It's a tough one. Well, from I guess this is insider information, but from editing Blake's review on the site, which you all should read, it seems like the movie positions Kong as kind of the protagonist of the movie. So I'm gonna go Big Monk.
Yeah,
so that's the choice. That's the choice here.
I'm not gonna shy away. I've been a Big Monk stan ever since this movie was announced. Here's the thing: if Godzilla drops something, how's he gonna pick it up? He can't.
Great question.
He has no opposable thumbs. He just has to like palm it and hope it doesn't fall. If King Kong drops something, he's got opposable thumbs. He could pick stuff up even if he wasn't the one that dropped it. Like he's got that. He's got simian intelligence. He can make tools. Kong, he's king. And so I binged all these movies over the weekend. And the thing is, in both of Godzilla's movies, at some point the monster completely beats him down and he needs humans to like nuke him back to life. It happens in both movies. He needs humans to help save him. In Kong Skull Island, the humans take Kong down and then he gets up, kills Samuel L. Jackson, and then kills the giant Skullcrawler King and his children without any human help. All while he's holding Brie Larson in his palm without killing her. So it's just Kong. There's no competition here.
I don't need to say anything here. I'm just gonna let you keep going.
Big Monkey. There's no contest. It's just Big Monk.
I'm really looking forward to this. Like I know I sat through 4 hours of the Justice League, but what I really wanted was Godzilla versus Big Monk. I just can't wait for all this stupidity. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, this is like, it's just, as someone who didn't really care for the last Godzilla movie, I could not be more excited to watch these two CGI giants just whale each other on top of a boat in Tokyo. I think they're at like a volcano or something at some point in the trailer, so I'm here for it.
And then I think it's Hong Kong at the end turns into like a neon light show where it's like, sure, why not? This sounds amazing.
Yeah, so we'll check back in next week and just talk about how we both bet everything on Kong and we're right. So yeah. I'm excited for that.
big money on Big Monk for sure.
I want Kong halftime, Kong to cover. But that is pretty much it for this week's episode of the MovieBabble Podcast. So we'll be back next week talking about Big Monkey. And really, what else do you need to talk about? Like probably 5 hours just on that subject alone.
Yeah, nothing else. Maybe Justice is gray again.
Monkey is gray.
I'm really looking forward to Adam Wingard's Big Monk is Gray version, which will be coming on HBO Max in a few weeks. I'm really looking forward to that.
Would it just be Monkey is brown to be more character appropriate? It's just sepia.
Why not? There's a lot of hidden themes in that color choice, as I'm sure you know. It's really artistic.
But anyways, that was this week's episode. Remember, you can always check us out online at moviebabble.com.